Hi guys, this is Hirosaki. This story is all about what if Naruto was in Star Wars. Revan and Naruto, immortal beings, return to the Republic as it heads towards war once again. What events will these two alter? Before we start, kindly like and subscribe to this channel, and look over the description box for the author of this amazing storyline. Welcome aboard. Chapter 1. Jedi Master Revan Namikaze looked at the smoldering controls of her ship. The damn thing blew up right as she was entering lightspeed, and her ship spun out of control. She didn't have a clue where she would end up if the ship didn't blow up before that. If she hadn't gotten a warning in the Force, she would have been sitting right at the controls and most likely dead. She allowed the ship's emergency systems to kick over before heading to the main hold, where she accessed the systems from the controls there. Times like this I miss the Ebon Hawk, she thought, sighing of the ship that was nothing more than rust and ash. Why am I suddenly thinking of things 4,000 years ago? Revan sighed again. She hadn't aged a day in 4,000 years. Not even the Masters knew that being a Solarian meant. She thought, and while she missed her homeworld, it had been destroyed long ago, while she had still been a child. Checking the systems, she saw she was coming up on Coruscant. Thank the Force for small favors, she thought. It had taken her some time to find a usable ship out beyond the Outer Rim. She'd been in hiding for nearly 1,000 years, and now the Force was telling her to make her return. And who am I to question the will of the Force? Shaking her head, she thought of all the things she had learned amongst the more unique worlds of unknown regions. My time on that world with Ninja was interesting, learned a lot of things there. With that thought, Revan formed a simple cross seal with one hand and focused her chakra. Multiple shadow clone jutsu. A puff of smoke and 6 identical copies of Revan appeared. Alright, we need to get the main controls and the cockpit fixed enough for us to land. Get to it. She pointed at 2 of the clones. She then looked at another pair. You two check the hyperdrive, it was hiccuping something fierce as we made the jump. The 4 clones nodded and went to their tasks. What about us, Rev? The last 2 clones asked. One of you gets to cook, the other gets to check our weapon supplies, she said. The one that got weapons nodded and went to do as it was told. The one left to the cooking was feeling rebellious. And what are you going to be doing while we're all busy? Revan paused and sighed. This was one side effect she hated with the Kage Bunshin. The clones could perform independent thought when they needed to. I'm going to check on Naruto, she said, a catch in her voice. The clone looked sad at that. He's going to be fine. The stasis pod was working fine when you last checked it, the clone said. Revan shook her head. I just hope after all these years the medical facilities haven't stagnated on Coruscant. The clone watched her go, a sad look on its face. 2 immortal beings, and yet he's being destroyed by an unknown poison that was designed just for him, the clone said sadly. He'll make it, Revan. The love you two share is too important for him to give up without a fight, the clone said before preparing a meal. Revan entered the medical bay and stopped before the stasis pod. Her head reached out and touched the glass over the occupant's face. He had whisker-like marks on his tan skin, long spiky blonde hair. His blue eyes were closed as she studied him, like she had done millions of times since she first met him. Hey lover, she said softly. We're coming up on Coruscant. I wish you were awake to see it. Revan stopped, her hand still resting on the glass. It's been a long year, love. I've missed you so much. Revan looked at her husband, her eyes taking in his features. I don't care what the new council has to say. I'll make sure you're better. We can head out. I can show you worlds and wonders of the galaxy. Revan reached out with the Force and felt him fighting the poison in his system, a battle to live. She didn't touch him in the Force, for she knew he needed his full attention, even in stasis, to keep the poison back. I won't lose you, Naruto Namikaze. I can't lose you. She said the last part softly. You have been my light, my life, my sanity. She thought, looking at the pod's occupant. Hey boss lady? She turned to see a shadow clone standing there covered in soot and sporting a grin. We rigged the console. Best thing would be to scrap this ship after we land. We can't do anything more with it. Revan nodded. She appreciated the report being verbal, rather than the clone dissipating and her getting the mental lowdown. Naruto had warned her that she could get a headache, and the information anyways, but she preferred the verbal after all the years of being a general. Thank you anyways, Revan said, and the clone disappeared in a puff of smoke. She sighed getting the information, then turned to look at the stasis pod once more. You'll be better, son love. With one last look she turned and left. Revan brought the ship in and was somewhat surprised at how much Coruscant had grown in 4,000 years. And yet, some things remain the same. She thought, spotting the Jedi Temple and the Senate buildings. Checking her readings, she plotted the course and brought the ship in. Jedi Temple, this is unnamed freighter requesting emergency landing and a medical team on hand. She said after activating the communications unit that made a strange noise after starting up. Unidentified freighter, this is Jedi Temple Control, say again? I have a poisoned person on board in stasis, I need a healer. Now open the doors, this ship isn't going to hold together much longer. Revan transmitted her codes and was surprised the doors opened. Guess they never got around to removing me from the accepted lists. Thank you, Bastila. She thought the last part as she brought the freighter in. It groaned as she fired the retro rockets and activated the landing gear. The hangar was nearly deserted, and she thanked the Force and Cammy for that. The ship landed and she heard the landing gear squeal in protest. She powered systems down and went to the boarding ramp and hit the release, before going to the medbay and preparing the stasis pod for movement. She used the cargo loader and was at the bottom of the ramp before she was met by several Jedi, one wearing healer's robes. Hey! She greeted and sighed. I've been around Naruto way too long. She saw their looks. What was he poisoned by? The healer asked, foregoing formalities, over the health of a patient. Not sure what it's called. It was tailor-made for him. Here's a sample of it I got. She handed a vial to the healer. We were beyond known space, so I put him in a pod and got the first ship I could find to get him here. The healer motioned for a pair of Padawans. Get this stasis pod to the medical center. Do not open it. They nodded and rushed it to the turbo lift. Revan sighed and moved to follow. A moment, please. She turned and saw several Jedi there. Few questions have we. Revan blinked, seeing a being that reminded her of Master Vandar. In all the years I've lived, all the worlds I've traveled, I have only encountered Master Vandar before and never his like. I can answer a few, but I would like to check on my husband, she said. Noticing their raised eyebrows, she wondered what that meant. Identification we need. The code you used to open the hangar, long and used has it been? The little trog isn't dumb. My name is Revan Namakase. My rank is that of Jedi Knight. Identification number 0073644036. The tall one next to the little green one was black, bald, and had the air of a Jedi Master, was holding a data pad. Her identification confirms. He paused and his eyes widened. Impossible. Revan smiled. Yes, I'm over 4,000 years old. I bet the Trog here is several centuries under his belt. The olive-green-skinned alien gave a bow of his head at that. Now, if you don't mind. Knight Revan, much the council has to ask you. After I'm sure my husband is fine, I will answer your questions. Sorry if I sound rude, masters, but where my mate is concerned, I don't have the patience to deal with questions. You want my history? Dig through the archives like a Padawan. She smiled at that. With a slight bow to them she hurried to the lift, leaving a group of bewildered Jedi. "Married?" one Obi-Wan Kenobi asked, looking at his master Qui-Gon Jinn in shock. "Knight Revan, raised in the old code," Master Yoda said, his eyes following the black-robed woman. "Revan? As in the Revanistic code?" Obi-Wan asked. Mace Windu handed Qui-Gon the data pad. "Solarian?" the Jedi Master asked, seeing her home world. "Wiped out long ago. Revan is the last of her people." Yoda said, a hint of sadness in his voice. "How long can they live?" Obi-Wan asked, confused. "Unless killed, they are immortal," Yoda said. "Sith Lord Exar Kun tried to end their world during his time. Revan as a child was the sole survivor." "You know a lot about Knight Revan," Qui-Gon noted as he was reading the entry in the data pad. Yoda made a humming sound and hobbled off, leaving Mace, Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan, and a dilapidated ship in the hangar. Chapter 2. The sounds of the medbay were soothing as Revan watched as Naruto was laid on the bed. "We were able to break down the toxin, and it was rather simple to concoct an antidote," the Jedi healer said. "Thank you. In the unknown regions, the technology isn't advanced enough to do such, and while they might come up with toxins like that, they rarely make antidotes," Revan said, her eyes on the sleeping form of her husband. "How long before he wakes up?" she asked. "About 2 hours, as his body is healing rapidly. It's not like anything I've seen before." Revan smiled. "Naruto has a natural healing factor. His body temperature will run hotter than you think it should," she said. The healer nodded. "I was going to ask about that." Revan sighed. "I suppose I should go before the council now that he's safe. If he wakes up while I'm gone, get him to eat." She smiled. "And make sure you have enough, he has a high metabolism." The healer nodded again, and Revan stopped by her lover's bed and kissed him lightly on the lips for the first time since he was put in stasis nearly a month ago. "I'll be back soon, love." She stroked his whisker marks and smiled softly as he instinctively leaned into her touch. Spinning about, she headed for the lift that would take her up to the council chambers. Some things stay the same, while others change. She thought of the layout of the temple, and while it had grown, she still knew where nearly all the important places were. Revan growled as she waited to speak with the council. "Damn old bastards, heh, look who's calling who old. But still, they want to talk to me, then make me wait. Councils all over the galaxy are the same, now or 4,000 years ago." She leaned against the wall across from the chamber doors, her right leg crossed over her left, her finger tapping a random beat on her crossed forearms. She turned her head and looked at the skyline of Coruscant, having not worrying about her ship falling apart around her. She noticed a lot of buildings reaching further above the clouds, the constant traffic in the skylines. More people are here. She reached out through the Force and felt the life energy of the planet. If there was a Sith Lord like Nihilius, he would feed good on Coruscant now. Revan sighed. She'd been in the unknown regions when her first master, Krya, had led 2 other Sith Lords on a purge of the Jedi. "Krya, how long has it been since I thought about you, my former master? Where did you fall? Was it after me? Jaina swore you helped her from her exile." Revan sighed. "I've lived too long, yet it's those that I thought of as family and friends that I always miss the most." Her mind turned towards her husband in the medical bay. "Beloved," she sent through their bond. "Rev? Where the hell am I?" came the annoyed feeling. Revan fought to not laugh out loud. "We are on Coruscant, in the Jedi Temple. It was the only place I could think of that might be able to help you." Resignation through the bond. "What happened to the bastard? I know you thought of him as a brother, love. But when you fell after that poison, I kind of went Sith Lord on his ass. The biggest piece left could be described as a dish sponge." "Oh, Reverend, are you okay?" came the concern. Revan took a moment to feel the love and concern in the bond. I am now that you are awake and well. I swear Naruto, I don't think I can lose you. Don't worry Rev, you won't. I think my healing factor would have won eventually. Well, I couldn't risk it. You saved me every day Naruto. You have since you found me all those years ago. She smiled feeling his embarrassment. I was 16, on a training trip with the biggest pervert in the elemental nations, and I find this angel swimming in a hidden pond under the moonlight. Revan blushed remembering their first meeting. You were so cute and sweet. I still feel like I robbed the cradle. Laughter came back across the bond. Brat. Eat, I need to meet with the council. They'll have more questions than your friend Konohamaru did when you handed him the Hokage hat. Snort, I thought Ko was going to shit a brick when I named him the 7th Hokage 5 years into my reign. Revan had to agree. And even at 52 he called you boss. Ko was one of my precious people. He'll be a fine Hokage, like his grandfather before him. Revan smiled. They had left Konoha in the hands of Konohamaru Sarutobi, after being married for nearly 30 years. He'll miss you, Revan sent. A hint of sadness came back. I'll miss them all as well. But Ko and Hanabi will be fine. Most of my friends are in their 60s and 70s or dead. It was a good time to leave, Naruto said across the bond. Our being there and not aging was hurting them. Hunting down Sasuke and his son Ichigo had to be done. The team learned Orochimaru's immortality jutsu, and I couldn't leave him to terrorize Konoha any longer. Revan nodded. It was one of the reasons they given to Konohamaru and Hanabi before they left. I sent a messenger toad to tell Konohamaru that we were leaving. I said we probably wouldn't be back for a long time. If ever, Naruto sent back sadly. Revan wished she was down there right now. Her husband was hurting, and she knew it was her decision that was causing it. It had been one of the same decisions she'd made countless times over the millennia. Force, I miss Bastila and Mission. Hell, even old Bindo, and even that damned pilot Onesai. She thought. Despite what many thought at the time, she hadn't loved Karth Onesai, she saw him as an annoying friend. Quick to judge and long time to apologize. She'd vanished after the Star Forge to take time to piece together her memories, and had taken Mission and Zalbar with her to the outer rim worlds of Napolis and Shington. The return had brought her face to face with her former friend Jaina Zolo, the exile as many called her. Revan called her friend and confidant. I should have done something other than let her go back to Atris after the war. That shoulda had it out for Jaina, because she followed me. Thinking of old friends' love, Naruto's mental voice asked softly. Sorry. Being back here is bringing old memories to the surface. People, places, old friends long gone, Revan sent back. It's okay Haim. The healer just brought a tray, is this slop even food? Revan laughed as she got the mental image. Goop. It's nutritious. Rev, it's gray, Naruto sent back. Eat your goop. I promise to take you out for real food when I'm done here, Revan sent noticing the door opening. Showtime. Wish me luck. You don't need any more luck. But I send my love with you Revan Namikaze. Revan felt the mental caress and kiss, and she squared her shoulders and entered the main council chamber of the Jedi Masters for the first time in 4,000 years. Naruto sighed as he looked at the bowl. Please tell me they have ramen. I'm not sure what you're asking about, sir. The healer said. Ramen, noodles, broth, vegetables. He saw her blank look. I swear if they don't have ramen, I'll have Revan take us back and fill the cargo hold with it, or get Iam's daughter or granddaughter to come with and be my personal ramen cook. Smiling at that, he looked at the substance again. You're sure this is food? I mean, it looks like something used to sandblast the walls. The healer smiled. Well, we did just clean the temple. Naruto narrowed his eyes. You're pulling my leg. I'm a Jedi, I don't have a sense of humor. The woman said, smiling even more. Naruto laughed. I think I'll like you. I'm Naruto. Naruto Namikaze. The woman smiled, and Naruto took a moment to study her. She had diamond marks on her cheeks and forehead. Her skin was pale, nearly white. She wore robes like Revan's but longer and were a deep blue. I am Healer Shirshir Dawn. Welcome to the Jedi Temple. So, my wife is with the council? Naruto asked after trying a mouthful of the goop, and realized it was like the energy bars Choji used to make for him. Knight Revan? She asked for confirmation. Yeah, he said with a smile of someone in love. It probably will take a while, as Knight Revan's return is the talk of the temple. Naruto groaned. Not very often that a knight comes back after missing for 4 millennia. Naruto shrugged. If I hadn't been stupid and gotten poisoned, I have a feeling it would have been even longer. Naruto said. About that poison. Shirshir started and Naruto nodded at her to continue. It's serpentine-based, but none of the serpents in the database were a match. I had to synthesize a whole new antidote out of the poison Knight Revan had collected. Naruto nodded. Yeah. Enemy made it and coated his sword with it. I thought my healing factor would have been able to deal with it, so I ignored the wound and kept going till I collapsed. What world are you from? Shirshir asked. Naruto scratched the back of his neck. Not sure it has a name. The elemental countries aren't into space travel, and we never really looked beyond the stars or thought of much else but what was happening on the dirt. Revan might know as she wandered a bit and picked up history before I met her. Naruto finished the goop. He wished for his usual amount of ramen, but it would wait. Being married has taught me patience, and Rev won't let me gorge myself on ramen like I did when I was little. So, what's it like to be married to Knight Revan? Shirshir asked. Naruto smiled at this. Well. Chapter 3. Welcome before this council, you are Knight Revan. Long has it been pondered of your fate. Yoda said after introductions had been completed. Revan gave a formal bow to the council. Truthfully, I never intended to return, circumstances were out of my control and I was forced to. Yoda made a humming sound and she narrowed her eyes. She'd seen the same look on Master Vrook's face, and she knew he was already thinking 6 moves ahead. Your husband is well? He finally asked, and shock filled the chamber as that bit of news hit the council members who hadn't witnessed her arrival to the temple. He's awake, hungry and eager to explore new places. And I almost pity anyone who aggravates him. I don't think Jedi have ever been pranked before. Revan finished her thought. She could see the concentration and frowns on several faces. If you're trying to scan my surface thoughts, that won't work, she said, startling them. Over the millennia I have constructed mental shields that not even masters of the mind arts can get in. Boy was Ino pissed when her family's techniques failed. Revan thought fondly of the blonde ninja that had been a friend of her husband's. What are your attentions now, Knight Revan? A female master asked. Revan looked at the dark-skinned woman and paused. Truthfully? I need to see the status of my vault, either get the ship get a new ship and have that one scrapped, then I was thinking of showing Naruto around my old stomping grounds. See how galactic history has fared in 4,000 years, have a few laughs. She saw one scowl on the Saurian master's face. I do know the Jedi of your time were forbidden such attachments. Revan snorted. Coming from you? How many wives and children do you have, Master Mundi, was it? She watched him shift in his seat. For those that don't know me or my history, let me sum up a few things for all of you. I am a knight of the old code. The code that was instated that you all follow was set after Exar Cohen. My master had me swear to the old code, for as a Solarian, I couldn't follow the code that most were trying their best to shove down every Padawan's throat back in those days. I use my emotions, instincts. And when the council wiped my memories, they still couldn't wipe out the core of who and what I was. A Sith Lord. Mace Windu spoke up and several masters looked panicked. Revan laughed. I was labeled a Sith Lord, but I wasn't really. She looked at Yoda. I believe you need to open Master Vander's personal holocron. It will answer many questions that happened in those days, and why he made sure I was made a Jedi a second time, despite some wanting to kill me. She looked around the gathered masters. Weak has this council become. I sense darkness in the Senate. Now hold on. A master stood up. You have no right to speak. Silence. Yoda said, cutting off the Corellian. Knight Revan, much she has seen. Foolish it is to ignore her warnings. Trust she has of mine, no question. Yoda's eyes scanned the masters, many of them shocked. Rank of master she was given by council after Battle of Taris. Confirm it now? He asked, looking at Revan, whose eyes widened. Oh, hell no. Revan said, shaking her head. I am not master material. I hate meetings, and if you ask Naruto, I can't even keep the summons listening to me. That last phrase quirked many eyebrows. Rank of master has been awarded you, Revan. Why do you run from it? Yoda asked. Because little Trog, I hate responsibility. Revan yelled the last bit out. I was in charge during the Mandalorian Wars as a knight, and I hated it. I hated making decisions that could and did cost lives of soldiers under my command. Despite what history said, I never wanted to go through with Vrook's and Vander's plan to root out traitors to the Republic. I never wanted to find the Star Forge, and I sure as hell didn't want to lead my best friend to the dark side and get blown up with my memories sealed away. Revan was clenching her fists at her side. I didn't want to journey around the thrice damn ignorant and stuck-up galaxy unlocking my memories and being nearly killed by a friend along the way. I didn't want to face my best friend who I considered my brother and kill him. Revan glared at Yoda. I left the Republic 4,000 years ago to get away from this. Don't. Revan. Yoda said, his voice soft. Deny who and what you are will not help you. You have a deep need to help others. Revan sighed. Damn manipulating old people. She thought, remembering Tsunade saying the same damn thing to her when she'd come to Konoha with Naruto, and the slug Sannin and 5th Hokage manipulated her into becoming a Nin of the Hidden Leaf. I really hate your species, Trog. Yoda gave her a satisfied grin. Protest to much you do. Vandar spoke highly of you, as did the Exile, Knight and later Master Shan and others in their holocrons. Sappy bastards. Revan muttered, but she was touched her friends thought of her, even when she ran away to heal her heart, body, and soul. Masters? They turned towards the door to see Healer Shirshir stepping in, a nervous look on her face. Yes? Revan groaned. He slipped out, didn't he? Shirshir nodded. I just went to check on supplies, and when I returned, he was gone. Revan laughed. Naruto hates hospitals of any kind, always has. She took a deep breath and then pulled a very battered-looking holocron from the inside of her robes. My holocron. I do want it back, Trog. She said, giving Yoda a look as the Force touched it and levitated it over to the clawed hand of Yoda, who nodded. Revan looked at Shirshir. I think I know where he is. How? Mace Windu asked. Naruto and I are bonded on many levels. That, and I know my husband very well. First thing he'll do is wander off and try and find a place in the temple to train. Most would be looking around to take in the sights, but Naruto, after any kind of confinement, will look for a place to stretch and test his body. I just hope he doesn't do anything too destructive. Revan said the last part softly. With a half bow she looked at the council. If you'll excuse me, masters, I best catch my husband before he offends someone and blows them and or the temple up. She didn't wait for their acknowledgement. Many wide eyes followed her out of the doors. Did she mean that? Plo Koon's deep voice rumbled. Anatolan Master, Kit Fisto grinned. Be interesting to find out, my friend. Yoda chuckled as he gazed at the ancient holocron. Interesting times ahead there will be. Master Revan and her husband will change many things, they shall. The council nodded, all of them noticing the inflection on the word master. I'll prepare her a list of Padawans to choose from. Adi Gallia said, but stopped as Yoda shook his head. Apprentice she has already. Strong in the Force is Naruto Namikaze. The others closed their eyes and reached out. By the Force. Adi said, her eyes opening. How can anyone be that bright in the Force? It's like he and Revan are of the Force. Yoda agreed. Flows around them, through them. To them there is no light side, no dark side. The Force just is. His hand stroked the holocron in his grip. Not many knew this, but Yoda was a history junkie, and he had in his hands the personal holocron to one of the biggest pieces of 4,000 years. Pair them with Kagan and Obi-Wan we shall. He said. Allow Revan and Naruto to become acclimated to the galaxy. And at the same time keep an eye on them. Mace said. She gives into her anger too easily. Solarian she is. Emotions are important to them. Empathy and instinct help them it had. Yoda looked around the gathered masters. Now, about Senate. Focus we shall on Revan's warning. Dark there is in its halls. Prepare we must. Naruto grinned as he slipped down the corridors. He'd taken a moment to admire the view from the window, and he'd been intimidated by what he saw, but he shook it off. Come on, Baka. This is Revan's territory. If she can stand living in that apartment for a year and not complain once, I cannot be such a rube and not be surprised. I mean, she showed me her ship, so I shouldn't be surprised by what I see. Naruto looked out over Coruscant. He was tempted to leave the temple to explore, but he would wait for Revan. I could find trouble that is beyond me. That, and even though Revan taught me a couple languages, I don't want to insult someone too badly without meaning it. He smiled as he used chakra to run up a wall and hang from a ceiling as several younglings passed by underneath him. He followed them, and despite being upside down he got a good idea where things were. I am shocked no one has looked up and noticed me. Naruto thought. But like Kakashi said, most people never look up. Naruto felt a moment of sadness thinking of his first sensei, who died at the hands of their former teammate. Shaking himself from his memories, he felt a spike of emotion from Revan, but she was shielding hard so he couldn't tell what was happening, and he knew that if she was in trouble she would tell him. He passed several rooms and ended up in a high room where he saw several people of various ages and species practicing with lightsabers. He remembered when Revan had him use one of hers back when he was on his journey. He was surprised how light they were and had to learn how to wield one on its lowest setting so as not to lop off a limb. Most of them are using the basic style Rev taught me at first. So that would make them Padawans? Dropping lightly to the floor in a darkened corner, he watched several of the spars. Maybe now that we're here, Revan and I could make my own. The blonde thought. Not that I don't mind using Revs, but she is a sight to see with both blades in motion. He remembered their assault on the Sound Village, him armed with a pair of ANBU swords and her with her lightsabers. Taught those bastards what happens when you kill my precious people. He thought of Irika's death and his rampage when he learned of the message that Sasuke had left for him with the body. Shaking his head and focusing his thoughts, he calmed his emotions, not that any of the Jedi in the room could tell, as he'd learned how to shield himself from numerous lessons with Revan. I think she had more fun going through my mind and learning everything about me. But then, I saw her life as well. Naruto smiled softly, remembering seeing some of his wife's most embarrassing moments from her first time as a Padawan, her time with Mission Veo during the hunt for the Star Forge and the reclamation of her memories. The pain she felt when realized that most her friends were dead, and her desire never to return to the Republic. And yet, she came back because of me, Naruto thought. Studying the room, he noticed the rack with numerous lightsabers, and went over to inspect them. Picking up one, he tested the balance of the grip. He put it back down. Too bottom heavy, he thought. He went through several of them, never activating them, but getting a feel for the handles. Oh. He paused, seeing a double-bladed grip. Revan can slap hers together to make a double-bladed lightsaber. This one is a solid grip, The blonde thought as he picked it up and spun the handle in a pattern he'd learned during his Bojutsu lessons with Jiraiya during his 3-year training trip. Nice balance to the grip. He thumbed the activation switch and a pair of orange blades sprung to life. Oh hell yeah, Naruto said with a smile. Going to an empty practice space, he went through several of the forms Revan had shown him, and added in several of his own moves from the styles of his homeworld. Kami, I'm no longer in the elemental nations. Who would have thought? Naruto kept moving. He found some of the Inuzuka styles felt like a perfect fit to the double-bladed style. Naruto was in constant motion, his eyes closed, unaware that nearly every eye in the training room was on him. Chapter 4. Naruto spun about. The simple Bojutsu style with slight alterations gave him a nearly perfect form with the orange blades of destruction. Several times to the onlookers it seemed the blonde was going to lose a limb, but he never once faltered. Several knights and masters were watching the stranger who to them had better control than many seasoned knights. The whiskered blonde ignored them all. He was in the zone, and enjoying the saber dance Revan had shown him. Wait, didn't that lead to that night in Suna? Naruto thought with a wicked grin on his face as he remembered their night of passion, and of course Gaara's yell the following morning about them putting up silencing jutsus. He gets used to sleeping and acts like it's more important than anything. Naruto did a leaping helicopter kick and landed with ease as he then tossed the double-bladed lightsaber into the air and performed several backflips before landing, catching it perfectly, continuing the motion into a rapid series of spins. Naruto began to slow his dance as he felt the familiar presence of his wife coming. He smiled as he opened up to her. Done with the meeting, dear? You snuck out of the medical center again, love. You promised me you wouldn't do that kind of stuff anymore. You swore on ramen. The mental yell from his wife froze him mid-motion. Now, Rev, love. I was perfectly fine. We agreed if I was fine, I didn't have to sit and wait. He felt her enter the room and opened his eyes, seeing her march past the gathered crowd. Don't you try and use your logic with Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, Rokundame Hokage or not, I will whip your ass from here to Konoha. Naruto deactivated the blade. He tried to think of a way out of sleeping on the couch. Revan however looked around and then smirked as she turned back to him. Well, since you're up and about, let's spar now that you have a lightsaber. When we're done, we'll work on making your own. Naruto nodded and moved back to the center of the mat. Revan was shielded, and he sighed knowing he was going to get his ass kicked. Wonder where I can get milk chocolate here. He wondered as she drew her 2 lightsabers, and they activated with a dual snapis, the purple and red blades humming as she took up her stance. Naruto reactivated the double-bladed orange lightsaber, and smiled seeing his wife's quirked eyebrow. No, she said, and he pouted. But, it's a good color. He said. It's orange. We talked about this. She said as he took up his own stance. Revan could feel some of the council entering the chamber, and she saw the pair of master and Padawan from when she arrived. Ready, love, Revan sent? Yeah. Full out, Naruto's voice came back to her as they circled. Yeah. Let's show them how to do this. Revan's mental voice barely finished when she lunged. Obi-Wan Kenobi's eyes widened as he watched the pair. He'd watched the blonde when he began going through his forms, he'd never seen anyone in the temple choose the double-bladed lightsaber. He had to admit, the unknown knight was something to see. When the woman from earlier arrived and spoke, Obi-Wan knew that they were speaking like master and apprentice. But didn't she say he was her husband when they arrived? Obi-Wan was confused. Qui-Gon was next to his apprentice and could feel the confusion and knew the younger man had many questions. He found his eyes watching the pair as the lightsabers clashed. He had to admit, the blonde was very good, and Revan was truly a master of the saber arts. Up a notch? The blonde asked, and Qui-Gon watched as she nodded, using the Force to try and shove the blonde back, but he had leapt high into the air, spinning about, and to everyone's shock was standing on the ceiling. "Come on up, Rev," he said, making a motion, and the gathered masters, knights and Padawans watched as Revan performed the same Force leap and spun about, stood on the ceiling, continuing their duel. "Impossible," Master Took said, watching them. Everyone leapt back when Revan lost her purple lightsaber, when the blonde did a series of spins. Everyone leapt back as the blade fell, but relaxed as it deactivated long before it got to head level. They watched as they added kicks and several fighting styles. The blonde lost his footing when Revan delivered a wicked headbutt that knocked him from the ceiling. He fell and flipped, landing in a crouch, the double blade deactivated. "So, that's how it's going to be," he growled, and Revan nodded, and to the shock of everyone stuck her tongue out and blew a raspberry at him, before leaping straight at him, coming towards him like an avenging angel, her red-bladed lightsaber leading the way. The blonde waited for the last moment, and the double blade snapped to life as he spun, using his momentum to knock her around. Revan flipped and landed, her blade before her. They met one another in the middle of the mat once more, and after a flurry of moves, Revan with a flip kick knocked the lightsaber from the blonde's hands. She used the Force to send it flying. To the shock of the crowd, she wasn't done as she swung her blade at the blonde's head, but he ducked and did a back flip away. He stopped and smiled. "Oh, it's on now, believe it," he said, and the gathered Jedi watched as he put his hands in a strange cross position. Revan cocked her eyes and saw the fox-like grin on her husband's face. "Ah, hell. Mass Shadow Clone Jutsu." The blonde roared, and the mat soon showed a dozen clones. "Hey Revchan," they said in unison. Revan watched as one of the clones handed Naruto her lost saber. "Get her," Naruto yelled. Revan knew she was going to have to work hard for this one. Around the mat sputters of shock and surprise as the blonde performed something they had never seen. Master Took spoke up. "Sith technique. Get the younglings away from here." "Stay they will," Yoda said, countering the history master. "Master Yoda, that is not a Sith technique," Yoda said, his own gaze watching as Revan called on the Force to fight off the horde of blondes. Much can be learned from Naruto Namikaze, it seems. Revan was in constant motion, slicing through the clones that were going up rapidly, until she met resistance in the form of her own purple lightsaber. "Hey wife," Naruto said with a grin. "Miss me?" "Hardly," she said, and once more they were in motion. Right, left, center, overhand, underhand, diagonal. The gathered Jedi were surprised. None could remember the last time they'd seen such a duel. Obi-Wan looked at his master. "Are they trying to kill one another?" "No, they are so attuned to the Force they know what the other is doing," Qui-Gon Jinn said. "But even so, some of those blows are too close, a moment's hesitation, and one of them will die." Revan smiled and did something that Naruto wasn't prepared for. She got under his guard and grabbing the front of his shirt pulled him into a deep kiss. The purple lightsaber deactivated as his hands went to her hips. Qui-Gon raised an eyebrow and chuckled while Obi-Wan went beet red. Most unorthodox way to win. His master chuckled. Many in the room were uncomfortable with the display. Master Yoda's chuckle could be heard, as could Obi-Wan's "Don't they need to breath?" Revan finally let her husband go, and smiled seeing the dazed look in his eyes. I win," she said, using the force to retrieve her saber and clip them both to her belt. She turned and saw that many of the masters were now ushering Padawans and younglings from the room. "Almost reminds me of the time Irika asked us to demonstrate a duel and Naruto did that to me. I don't recall ever seeing Irika ever turn that shade before, but some of knights and masters here look like they could put him to shame." Seeing Yoda and Mace Windu, she smiled and gave a slight bow. "Well played, Master Revan," Yoda said. "Yeah, well, it's not something you can learn in the temple," she said with a grin, and saw her husband coming out of his daze. She felt the laughter and saw the pair from before. "Hello." The older of the pair gave a slight bow. "Qui-Gon Jinn and my Padawan, Obi-Wan Kenobi. Most impressive display between you and your Padawan. Revan Namikaze, and he's my husband, not my Padawan." "So, he's a knight then?" Obi-Wan asked. His curiosity was screaming at him to find out all he could of the pair. "No. Naruto's never been trained in the Jedi arts. But from his world, he is an accomplished ninja and a former leader amongst his people." "Not trained, but..." Obi-Wan looked as Naruto was putting the borrowed lightsaber away, a grin on his face. Revan laughed. "On his world they have many skills and abilities that make what we do with the Force seem tame. They can control and manipulate the elements. They use a form of spiritual energy called chakra," she said. "During my time amongst them, I learned how to harness it. Granted, I'll never be anywhere near my husband's chakra capacity. He of course has more than 200 people." 3. The turn to see Naruto standing there with a grin. "On the chakra scale Tsunade Baa-chan performed, I have more than 300 people combined, and that's before I tap into what the fox left me," he said, scratching the back of his neck, seeing all the eyes upon him. "Needless to say, Naruto is a juggernaut in battle." "You fight many?" Obi-Wan asked. Naruto looked sad. "Far too many." His eyes took on a faraway look, and the more skilled masters knew that was a look of a veteran. Yoda broke the silence. "Master Revan, assistance we require from you and your husband." Revan looked at the head of the council. "Master?" Naruto asked, and she could hear the teasing in his grin, even though her back was to him. "Stow it, love, or you'll sleep on the couch," she said. Naruto mock pouted, then grinned. "But you never let me sleep there alone." Revan sighed. She hated to admit it, but he was right. "Every time I banish him to the couch, I can't sleep and join him, which then leads to more strenuous activities." Naruto saw the blush, and his fox-like grin got even bigger. Yoda ignored the byplay. "Ask that you team up with Master Qui-Gon and his Padawan on duties. It would be beneficial to both sides. You would have guides in a universe that has changed since your last time here, and they would benefit from both of yours experience." Revan looked at Naruto, who shrugged. They didn't use the link as they thought it was rude to do it around others, remembering Ino's screams every time they would hold conversations and laugh or blush while out for dinner with her and Choji. "Naruto?" "Not like we really have pressing matters, Rev," he answered. "Nor a ship," Revan muttered. Naruto nodded as he got the mental picture of the ship. Revan looked at Yoda. "We accept with the knowledge that we can leave when we wish, and decline missions that we don't want." Yoda nodded his head. Naruto was looking at him. "Who's the frog?" Revan laughed while the rest of the council looked shocked at his question. Qui-Gon turned his head, trying to hide his own smirk. Obi-Wan looked scandalized that someone would insult Master Yoda about it. Even more, Master Yoda chuckled. "Much to learn, young Namikaze, yes, much to learn," Yoda said once everyone had gathered themselves, his eyes on Revan, who still smirked. "Learn?" He shot a look at Revan. "Some of the things I taught you before we left Konoha." Naruto nodded. "Actually, a lot of the things Revan taught me or tried to teach me I can't use." Meditation sure, but I don't have her connection to the Force. The others looked surprised. Naruto is sensitive due to certain things that have happened to him long ago. As you can see, he is able to wield a lightsaber. But what of the standing on the ceiling or those duplicates? Obi-Wan asked. His speed? Revan smiled. Those are part of his abilities. Taijutsu, ninjutsu, geijutsu are just some of the disciplines from his world. She looked at Naruto, then at the masters. I think it's best if we give them a demonstration of your skills, sweetie. Naruto smiled. Yes, dear. He said, and she swiped at him, but he used a kawarimi to swap himself out with a log. What? How? Obi-Wan, the most outspoken of the group, was shocked. They heard laughing and looked around. Revan pointed up and Naruto was on the ceiling once more. That was the simplest ability all students of the Ninja Academy use. A substitution jutsu, which allows us to swap out with items or even people if you're strong enough. Where'd the log come from? Obi-Wan asked while the masters watched on. Oh, Rev? Naruto asked, scratching the back of his neck, and looked at his wife for an explanation. Men. She muttered. I had somewhat stored in the hold of the ship. You instinctively reached out for it as it was something you're most familiar with. I'm sure in time you'll find something new around here. Naruto smiled and dropped from the ceiling, landing on his feet. Academy students also learn a henge, or transformation jutsu. Naruto put his hands in the seal, and with a puff of smoke where Naruto stood, now was a perfect replica of Master Yoda. Naruto over time has come a long way. He no longer needs to say the name, and nearly all his jutsus that require hand seals he can now do one-handed. Revan said as Obi-Wan and the others were studying the Naruyoda. Fascinating. Obi-Wan said as he reached out to touch it. A puff of smoke and Naruto was back. The low-level ones can be dispelled with a simple touch. Naruto said. Another skill learned at the Ninja Academy is the Bunshin, or body-splitting jutsu. The Academy version isn't solid, but an illusion. Naruto, however, has way too much chakra, and thus can't perform it. Revan performed it and whispered the name, and with a puff 3 replicas were next to her. Obi-Wan reached out and his hand passed through it, and then it went up in a puff of smoke. However, my darling husband can perform a type of Bunshin that not many can do without feeling a drain on their chakra, or personal energies. Naruto put his hand in the cross-seal position. Shadow Clone Jutsu. Naruto roared, giving Revan a wink before the whole room was covered in smoke. As it cleared, the Council of Masters were shocked, as were Kagan and Obi-Wan. Ceiling, floor and walls were covered with what looked like 1,000 Naruto clones. And if you're impressed by this isn't even a tenth of the clones he can generate before he feels tired. Revan said. Her mind remembered the battle for the Waterfall Village when Orochimaru and Sasuke tried to steal their secrets. Naruto had rushed to the aid of his friends there, and with just himself and Jiraiya, at the time fought off the Sound's invasion. One clone giggled when Obi-Wan poked it, and it slapped his hand. Quit it, that tickles. They're solid. Obi-Wan said, surprised, even after witnessing them against Revan earlier. Okay dear, put your clones away. She said, and they watched as Naruto dispelled them in groups of 10. Why not all at once? Obi-Wan asked after watching this for a bit. The downside is that you remember what the clone does. Naruto learned the hard way of information overload and spent a week in a coma. Granted, when he woke up he had the whole Konoha library in his head, and the headache to prove it. The original Naruto snorted. Tsunade Bah-chan told me if it had been anyone else, they never would have woken up from that coma, or waken up dead of a brain aneurysm. Obi-Wan looked at Kagan and mouthed, woke up dead? Kagan had a smile on his face, and leaned in close to his Padawan. Turn of phrase, my Padawan. I've heard some similar phrases on the lower sections of Coruscant or Outer Rim worlds. I can do a max of 10 clones, but I feel exhausted after. Revan told the masters. And that was nearly with 40 years training up my own chakra reserves. Is there anything else? One of the masters asked. Naruto shrugged. A lot of my jutsu are combat-related, and even more of them are on the destructive side of the surrounding area. That and Rev's forbidden me doing them indoors. And good reason. You flooded the lower levels of the Hokage Tower when you used that Suiton jutsu to clean the upper levels. Naruto chuckled. Ah, but Ibiki said it's the cleanest the interrogation rooms have ever been after that. Revan growled. You and him. I told Tsunade that was a bad idea to allow you two to work together on anything. But I was the Hokage. And yet, you acted like you were. A cough brought them out of their verbal sparring. Sorry, Master Yoda. She shot her husband a look. We will talk about that later. Naruto just sighed. I just can't win. The blonde thought. Now then, why don't you spend some time familiarizing yourself with the temple, and ask Obi-Wan and Master Kagan for assistance? Revan nodded. And we need my vault. Naruto needs a lightsaber of his own. Too old. One of the masters began and Revan looked at him. I wasn't asking, I was merely informing. She shot Yoda a look and he nodded. Welcome to the use of a workroom and the archives you both are. Yoda got the others to leave and Naruto was standing, his fingers laced behind his head. Any place decent to eat that don't have goop? He asked Obi-Wan, and Revan laughed. I swear you and Choji must be related. She finally said after stopping chuckling. Could be. Naruto started then finished with a shrug before looking at his wife. They don't have ramen. Revan smiled. I'm sure we can find something close. She said before looking at the master and Padawan before her. Gentlemen, lead the way. Chapter 5. Dex's Diner. How often do you come here? Revan asked Obi-Wan, who shot his master a look. More than I was supposed to. Obi-Wan confesses with a shrug at Kagan smiles. I know when you snuck out. He admitted, and Obi-Wan sighed, figuring his one act of defiance hadn't really mattered in the end. I like the Jawa juice, he said. Naruto and Dex got on very well, and after Naruto described ramen to the Basilisk. Dexter Jetster liked the blonde who described his favorite dishes, and Dex found suitable substitutes, and soon the Jedi were watching as Naruto inhaled the noodles. Revan, watching her husband, shook her head and laughed as he chalked up another bowl. You know, you're going to regret offering to buy him lunch, she said, sipping her Juma juice. Kagan watched as another bowl was brought by the robo-waitress. How much can he eat? The master asked, his eyes following Naruto's movements, which seemed like a blur. Well, she looked at Naruto. Anywhere from 15 bowls to 50. 50. Obi-Wan said in shock. Revan shrugged. His metabolism and the amount of energy he uses gives him such an appetite. She smiled. The few times I cooked a picnic lunch, I usually started early in the morning to get it all ready by lunch, but then he would show manners. Naruto looked up and quirked an eyebrow at her. Revan laughed. Don't give me that look, Naruto-kun. You are a glutton when it comes to ramen. I remember Irika crying about your celebration to Chunin. He had to take 3 missions to cover that bill. Naruto swallowed his last bite and looked at her. Yet you haven't mentioned your near-criminal record in regards to Paki. She smiled. I'm your wife, I'm allowed to pick on you, and as a loving and devoted husband you're not supposed to mention my imperfections. Naruto shrugged. He looked at the stack of empty bowls, then at Revan. She shook her head and he sighed. Fine. But we can come back, right? Revan laughed before looking at Kagan. I'll cover this, you weren't prepared for the black hole that's his stomach. He nodded and she went to pay for the lunch. Obi-Wan watched as Naruto stood and stretched. Ah, that was good. So, other than that room, is there somewhere that we can practice that they won't mind getting a bit thrashed? Exercise? Obi-Wan said in surprise. How can you even move after eating all that? Naruto smiled. That was nothing. Naruto waved it off. Revan looked at Kagan. So, how do you wish to go about this? The male master shrugged. We take things as they come. Revan smiled. We're going to get along fine. But I was talking about the tour. Coruscant has changed in 4,000 years, some landmarks are the same, but... She looked at the skyline filled with cruisers and speeders. Come, I think we'll start with the need-to-know places and work on down from there. He said and turned and stopped, seeing his Padawan in a headlock and Naruto running his knuckles over his skull. Say it. Say it. Naruto. Revan yelled and the blonde stopped in mid-nagi. But Rev, he insulted Ramen and then. I did not. I just said eating all those noodles can't be healthy. Obi-Wan protested. See. Revan sighed. My husband is such a man-child at times. She muttered and with the force separated Naruto from Obi-Wan. Sorry gentlemen, he gets energetic after eating so much, and sleeping, and sigh. Alright, he's a stamina freak, but that's one of his good qualities. Revan smiled as her man hung in the air scratching the back of his head. You going to put me down nicely, or will I need to bring up certain issues? The blonde asked and Revan scowled. You puke on me, and I swear I'll use your guts to paint the temple. Naruto laughed as she finally released him, the two Jedi and the patrons watching the strange pair. Naruto looked at Dexter. I'll be back for more, that was awesome food. Dex smiled. Always welcome you'll be, lad. Any friend of Obi-Wan's. The said Padawan lowered his head. Dex. The Basilisk waved him off. You saved my hide. Besides, they're good people, keep close to them. He said, patting the Padawan on the shoulder and giving Kagan a nod. Is that natural? Obi-Wan asked as they saw Naruto atop a building. Back on his world, Naruto would find the highest point and watch the sunset. He's confused and worried. Revan said. They had wandered the city and Revan would point out some things that were similar. She saw species, and there were times she missed old friends she knew were long gone. She saw Naruto, his inquisitive eyes taking in things, and then he would see a being or something that would cause him to remember his friends. She sighed. He will outlive them all, he's not even hit his first millennium. It was near sundown that Naruto had leapt from building to building, climbing higher. Revan and the Jedi followed in a speeder, and were now hovering off to the side. Revan could feel his pain and conflict. He had the door closed and she knew he didn't want to talk. He'd been like that after Jiraiya's passing. Kagan touched her elbow. She turned and gave him a smile. He's mourning. He knows he'll never see his friends, his precious people again. We left his world, and he was unconscious for it. He never got the chance to say goodbye. And I never told him. It took years to reach Coruscant from the unknown regions with micro jumps to light speed. She looked at the sun as it kissed the horizon. I spent time in meditative trances and working on keeping the ship in motion. Why didn't you stop at any of the worlds between here and there then? Obi-Wan asked. Revan smiled. Fear. I was afraid what I would find. Afraid that the Jedi would be no more. Afraid that I was rushing my one reason in the galaxy on a wild goose chase. I thought that even should the Jedi be wiped out again, I thought the archives always survive. She looked at Kagan then. Coruscant was brought to its knees when I was a child. Structures leveled to the ground, but with the vaults, and that built to the core, the only way for things to be destroyed fully would be to blow up the planet. I knew that even if the Jedi were gone, the holocrons would be here. Kagan Jinn looked at Revan then. You would have spent years in study to find a cure if the healers hadn't been here. he said. Revan nodded. Shaking her head, she watched as Naruto tilted his head as the wind whipped about him. He is my strength. I'd been alone for so long, and then I met him. He was loud, obnoxious, and his presence sang in the Force so loudly, it was like being cradled in love and warmth. Revan smiled as they sat in the workroom. Obi-Wan and Kagan had gone off to work on saber forms. Revan watched as Naruto constructed his lightsaber. Not going with the double-bladed? She asked, noticing the handle. Naruto shook his head. I kind of like having a free hand for jutsus, he said as he connected wires. You picked out your lens and crystals? Revan asked, staying by the wall. Yeah. Obi-Wan was surprised when I pulled out that pearl. Naruto said, he was biting his lip as he worked slowly putting the inside components together. Revan refused to let him use any pre-assembled parts of any kind. I got that pearl 4,000 years ago when I helped kill a krayt dragon on Tatooine. I never felt right using it. Naruto thought about using Tsunade's necklace, but he couldn't part with it, the comfortable weight around his neck. I'm surprised you didn't use that orange crystal. Revan teased. HN. Was Naruto's response as he finished the controls and slipped it into the cylinder before grabbing a lens, an emitter, a smaller stone that Revan said was the power source. Trust me, you won't have the problem of it running out of power or shorting out at a bad time, she said. The slender green stone reminded Naruto of the one around his neck. They are Solarian shards, Revan admitted. My people would use them to power everything from vehicles, to droids, to small appliances. Naruto turned to his wife. You okay? He asked. She nodded. You? No, but as long as I have you, I'll get better every day, he said and stood and pulled her into a hug. Revan melted against him. I should be used to it by now, she whispered into his shoulder as he stroked her hair. As long as we live, those we knew and loved will always be remembered. Mourn, but don't drown in it. He continued to hug her. It hits me at the damnedest times, Revan said. Naruto said nothing. He did what he always did when his wife got like this, he held her and supported her. She rarely talked about her home world, like he avoided his early years before he became a ninja. Are you avoiding finishing your lightsaber, love? Revan asked after nearly 10 minutes of being held in the arms of the man she loved. Naruto chuckled. I just remember your stories of a badly built saber blowing up in the owner's face. Revan pulled back and her left hand stroked his cheek. You never screw up, smiles, well, on things that are important anyways. Naruto mock scowled. Gee, thanks. She kissed his chin. Go and finish it, then we'll go to bed. But I'm not tired, Naruto complained. Who said it was to sleep? Revan said, slipping from her lover's arms and fading into the shadows. Now, back to work. Naruto sighed. She always does that to me, winds me up and slips away. Her laughter from the shadows told Naruto what he already knew, that his wife did it on purpose. Of course, the love-making afterwards is beyond description. Blonde thought as he sat back down at the bench, the grin never leaving his face, his fingers slipping components together as if he'd built the lightsaber 100 times. From her shadowed view, Revan smiled. Force-sensitive beyond measure, his senses are better than anyone's, and he might not have many force powers, but the ones he uses without thinking put masters to shame. She watched with a grin on her own face that matched her husband's. Better have water nearby. Last time we were both dehydrated. Chapter 6. Naruto smiled as he entered the training dojo that morning. Many noticed the ear-to-ear grin on his face, but he wasn't looking at them. In his hand was his newly constructed lightsaber. It wasn't the completion of the weapon that had the smile on his face. While it was a happy moment, it wasn't the cause of the smile. He'd spent the night making love to his wife, and the fact she was having issues rising from their bed was. I did good. Naruto thought with a grin after kissing her awake and leaving her to curse him for her inability to stand. Walking yet love, he sent through the bond. The snarl had him laughing outright. He stopped seeing Obi-Wan sitting meditating. Hey! Naruto said, dropping down into his own lotus position, hands on knees. Obi-Wan looked at him. Good morning, you're happy. Naruto smiled even more. Had a good night. Obi-Wan noticed the lightsaber on the mat between them. You finished it already? He asked in surprise. Yeah. Rev's a taskmistress when it comes to things like this. But you were building it from scratch, with no pre-manufactured parts. Obi-Wan said in surprise. Have you activated it? Once. I was going to come here and test it out, but she turns on smoothly. She? Obi-Wan asked, quirking an eyebrow. Naruto laughed. Bad habit from my world. Weapons were given names or even personal identifying marks. Obi-Wan looked, and Naruto, seeing the question, nodded and watched as the brunette picked up the hilt and looked it over. What are these runes? Obi-Wan asked, noticing the marks around the grip. This one running down the side says the will of fire. It's a phrase someone precious to me believed in. Naruto said, his mind flashing to Sarutobi Ojizen, his first precious person. He was the leader of my village, and the first person to ever care about me. Obi-Wan felt the flash of pain. I'm sorry. Naruto waved off the apology. Nothing to be sorry for. He lived a long life, and he died protecting the village like the Hokage he was. What's this one? Naruto looked at the next set of lines and smiled. My personal Nindo. Never give up. It was something I told myself giving up. Obi-Wan was amazed at the attention that had been put into the weapon in his hands. And this one? Naruto blushed. That one is personal, and I won't translate it. Looks like Rev added something as well. The blonde thought, seeing the runes. To my beloved. The Force binds us forever, Rev. Obi-Wan looked at the strange seal at the bottom of the lightsaber. What's this? Ah, a seal to prevent it from being damaged. Really? That's not possible, is it? Obi-Wan asked. Naruto nodded. Use yours and see. I couldn't, if I damaged it. Then it's back to the drawing board. Naruto said, motioning for him to go ahead and do it. Obi-Wan stood and picked up his own lightsaber that was next to him. It activated with a snap hiss, and the blue blade hummed. Go ahead, Ben. Naruto said, and Obi-Wan paused. What? What do you mean, what? Naruto asked. You called me Ben. The Padawan said. Heh. Naruto scratched the back of his neck. Nickname? The Padawan sighed and lightly touched the hilt on the floor with his blue blade. He raised an eyebrow when nothing happened. He put more pressure, and still nothing. He deactivated his own and knelt, touching the lightsaber hilt on the floor. It's still cool, he said in surprise. Cool, it worked, Naruto said as he picked it up. He stood and smiled, thumbing the activation switch. The pearl-white blade sprang to life with the snap hiss, and Naruto smiled as the blade hummed. He stepped away from Obi-Wan and gave it several practice swings, and then deactivated it. What happened next surprised Obi-Wan as the hilt vanished with a slight poof, poof. Did it explode? Are you okay? The Padawan asked, rushing to his friend's side. Naruto grinned. I'm fine, Ben. I put a storage seal on my wristband. Naruto showed him the piece of cloth with a seal on it. This way it can't be taken away. I plan to add the seal to my others on my arm later, but I wanted to make sure everything else was working fine first. You can store things on you like that? Obi-Wan asked in surprise. Naruto smiled as a poof later he was holding 3 kunai in his hand. Oh yeah. I learned how to do this on my training trip with Ero-Sannin. He taught my dad and then me. Obi-Wan didn't understand all of it, but Naruto was proud of his accomplishments. I can make you one if you want. Naruto offered and Obi-Wan looked at him in surprise. But don't I need, blast, what did you and Master Revan call it? Chakram. Chakra. And everyone has chakra, even a friend of mine had it, he just couldn't use it for anything as his chakra paths were damaged. But he could still do ceiling scrolls, tree climb and leaps. Naruto missed Lee. The Taijutsu master had been Naruto's friend when younger and his personal bodyguard when he became Hokage. Lee had passed on in his sleep after contacting a strange disease that destroyed his muscles and finally stopped his heart. Lee had a good life, and his son Gon showed he was just like his mother and father. Besides Ben, once I place the seal tattoo you won't need to worry about it as it will tie into your system. Okay, why the nickname? And why Ben? Obi-Wan asked. A laughter had both turns. Naruto smiled seeing Revan standing there, her hair down, a brush in her hand. Morning love. He said kissing her cheek. What do you need? My hair. You remember the deal. She said and Naruto nodded as he walked her to the seats and as she knelt, he sat behind her and took the brush. Obi-Wan watched the pair. Naruto started brushing his wife's hair. Revan seeing him watching smiled. We have a deal, I was going to cut it shorter, but he likes running his hands through it, so I told him if I kept it long, then he would have to help its upkeep. Naruto ran the brush through her hair and smiled. It's relaxing as well. Revan smiled and Obi-Wan bet she would purr. And his nicknaming you and Ben, it's simple really. The Jedi Master said as she allowed her husband to brush her hair, the 3 of them ignoring the others watching from around the room. Naruto gives nicknames to people he likes and trusts. As for Ben, I took the B from your first part of your name and N sound from Wan and thus you've been christened Ben. Naruto said with his trademark grin. Ignore the man-child behind me, I doubt he'll ever grow up. Naruto pinched the back of her neck. That's not what you were saying earlier. Obi-Wan got to see the Jedi Master blush. Tsunade's right, you are a brat. Revan said. Yeah, well Ba-chan was a drunk, and I might be a brat, but I caught your attention, O powerful Jedi. Revan nodded at that. The 3 sat in silence as Naruto brushed out her hair, and then began to put it in a braid. Wait, your hair was shorter yesterday. Obi-Wan realized. Revan laughed. Actually, I used a ninjutsu to shorten it. I learned it from Tsunade and her apprentice Shizune. But when it's me and Naruto I remove it and allow it to be its real length. Obi-Wan saw that the hair went down her back to the base of her spine. He watched as Naruto braided it with a practiced ease. I find it relaxing like this, Naruto answered. It allows me to just be. Revan smiled. He loses himself in the Force when he does this. Like when he was making his lightsaber, or when he's making seals. She looked at Obi-Wan. Let him make you a storage seal. If you can, make a secondary lightsaber to keep there. She held up her arm, and Obi-Wan saw the seal that Naruto had on the band was on the back of her wrist. It wasn't even an inch in diameter. A poof later and Revan had her lightsaber in her hand. They can't take away what they can't grab. She said and tossed it aside. Obi-Wan watched as it vanished in a poof, and another poof it was back in her hand. Prevents another Force user from using the Force to block your attempts to retrieve it. Good advice. The 3 turned to see Kagan approaching. Glad I found you, Master Revan. The Council has asked that you and I run A to Nar Shaddaa. Obi-Wan and Naruto can come with, or stay here. Stay here. Revan said. Naruto looked at her and she sighed. Nar Shaddaa is not a place I want to expose you to. It makes the dive in rice look like a resort. Love, you don't need to protect me, Naruto said as he continued to braid her hair. He looked up at Kagon. You want me to do yours next? He said, seeing the man's messy ponytail. No, thank you. Revan smiled. My husband could have been a stylist. But Hokage was more fun, he said. Revan sighed. You caused enough havoc for the next 10 Hokages that follow you. Naruto smirked. I don't know. Konohamaru might actually surpass me. Revan groaned at that. He did like to imitate you. I think that's cause his contract with the monkeys is better than Aji-san's ever was. The two Jedi watched the pair, and Revan sighed. You can come, but you don't go anywhere without me or Kagon. What about Ben? Revan sighed, but Kagon spoke up first. I would prefer that you both stay close to us. Nar Shaddaa is a rough world under the control of the Hutts. It is a hive of scum and villainy. He looked at the two younger men, or young-looking in Naruto's case. We must be cautious. That's it for this reading. Hit like and subscribe for a free ticket pass going to the different worlds of anime fanfictions. Looking forward to having you on board again.